Hey, Lawrence.
Yes.
So my Bluetooth speakers that I tested 30 minutes ago are broken now. And so if my sound, if there's ambient noise and stuff, let me know. And also same with the video, if it causes the sound to be choppy, let me know.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Will do.
I'm sorry, what was that, Tori? I couldn't really hear you, Tori. What were you saying?
Oh, I'm glad you didn't hear that.
No, I'm kidding. I heard every word.
I'm remote today, and I figured out the Wi-Fi here was poor, and then I tested some other things, and then I have a solution that's working now, but I'm a little bit nervous.
We know where James is.
Yeah, he's right there.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
Hey, James.
yep.
Okay. Andrew, are we live on YouTube? Yeah. Well,
I'm not
see a
Andrew,
note on my screen that we are live on YouTube, but there's another box, the Zoom box, that says you're in a practice session. Attendees cannot join until you start the webinar. Do I need, since I'm host, do I need to click on that or no? There we go.
Let me do that, and let me do that, and we are live and going and recording.
And attendees are climbing, so there we go.
And it is 4:30. Is everyone ready to proceed?
Sure.
yes.
It's pretty busy, so we might as well. Full evening. Welcome to the July 28th, 2021 BAR Large Virtual Meeting. My name is John Robinson. The other board members present this afternoon are Jay White, Luda Subchuck, who will recuse from agenda item number 3, Leon Scott, James Metters. City staff present this evening are Tori Parrish, Lawrence Courtney, and Frankie Pinto. The order of the meeting will be as follows. There will be an introduction and overview of the project conducted by city staff to the board and for the public. This will be followed by the application presentation, which has a 10-minute time limit or additional time as may be determined by the chair, and any questions of the applicant by the board or staff. Any and all presenters should clearly state their name for the record. Persons affiliated with the project, be they owners, developers, designers, consultants, or others, should speak during this portion of the meeting rather than during public comment. The application presentation period is then followed by a public comment period, which has a 10-minute time limit unless extended by the chair. During this time, the applicant does not respond to comments made by the public. Again, any member of the public speaking needs to clearly state their name and address for the record. The public comment period is followed by city staff comments and recommendations. This is then followed by the applicant's response time or time for clarification of the public comments, city staff comments, and recommendations. There's a 5-minute interval for this response time. This is followed by a board discussion and vote. The applicant presentation and public comment period is over. The applicant may at this time clarify inaccurate information when recognized by the chair by raising a hand and waiting to be called upon, but otherwise may only speak after they have been questioned by a board member. No agenda item this evening has been withdrawn. This is a reminder to the public and our applicants that other than the virtual means that you are with us by, please turn off all cell phones or other devices. Please limit your comments to architecture only. Comments related to zoning, such as parking, traffic, lot coverage, livability concerns, etc., are not the purview of this board and cannot be voiced here. I'll provide some additional protocol to our applicants and the public this evening, and a reminder to our board. Staff will control the PowerPoint presentations that include everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with the submittal requirements. Applicants simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide or whichever page they would like the staff to go to during presentation. Applicants, staff, and board members are required to give their name whenever speaking. Video and microphone has been disabled for all attendees. Attendees, as opposed to board members or staff, will only be given the capabilities called on during the public comment period. The chat and Q&A functions have been disabled. Additional notes regarding public comment. The applicants, meaning all team members and the public, have been required to register prior to this evening, indicating the project that they wish to comment on and to submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Just as in an in-person meeting, all applications heard today are part of a public meeting format. If you registered beforehand and will speak during the public comment of the period, you will need to state your name and address for the record. Those members of the public that have registered will be called upon in order by project. The staff will call on the registered members of the public to speak for each project. Unregistered members of the public who raise their hand will not be called on. Additional protocol notes for the board. Board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments and a vote on the motion. Each member, when voting, should respond either yay in favor or nay not in favor. The chair shall reread the motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion should correct the chair if he has not reread the motion accurately. If a board member needs to recuse, he or she will temporarily be removed from the meeting and placed back in the meeting at the start of the next agenda item. If the board needs to go into executive session, they will call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they're ready to return to the regular meeting. Results and staff comments will be posted on the city website at www.charleston-sc.gov/BAR. These proceedings are being recorded and broadcasted to the City of Charleston's YouTube channel. Ms. Parrish, what is agenda item 1 this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Agenda item number 1 is 31 Lawrence, which was previously 10 Society Street, and 31 Lawrence, and 32 Lawrence Street. This is the request for approval of mock-up panels. The building is not rated. It's in the Ensign Borough neighborhood, Heights District 5630V in the Old City District. These are the previous 32 Lawrence mock-up staff comments. Number 1, it is, actually these are the observations, I'm sorry. It is understood that while this is a part of a larger project, the request is for approval of the mock-up for 32 Lawrence Street only. And number 2, at staff review of mock-up drawings, we specifically request the full package to include details, as the board no longer has them at this point. While this mock-up is relatively simple, a full package showing all details will be required for the next mock-up of the larger 10 Society Street / 31 Lawrence Street portion of the project. In the future, mock-up packages which do not include all details will be deferred. And then the staff comments were, number 1, a robust QA/QC package shall be in place to address the shipping, handling, placement, and protection of all precast members. Number 2, sealants at joints and precast members are to be flush with the exterior form and minimized in terms of width. Number 3, there's eye taping placed behind the precast urn, potentially at a drain. Please clarify what this is and whether it will be on the final precast piece. Number 4, it is understood that all metal pieces are to reflect the elimination of exposed fasteners. Number 5, it appears that there are 3 different sealant colors at the brick control joint. The top 2 are very close, with the uppermost color appearing a bit lighter. This lighter color also appears to be the paint color at the joint between the porch parts and at the brick wall dryer vent. It's a good generalized brick mortar blended color and is approved. Number 6, the generalized brick mortar blended color should be used at the joint between fenestration elements and brick returns, as well as at flashing occurring on or against brick, lintels, and any other items occurring on the brick wall, which need to be visually minimized. Number 7, keep the brick joints uniform. Some of the head joints are excessively wide. Number 8, scratches to pre-finished metal surfaces shall be touched up to match existing. 9, the additional boxy piece at the seal of the window shown on the porch seems heavy and extraneous. Staff recommends the elimination of this extra sill piece and a simplification to a more traditional sill form with sill flashing that does not exceed the face of brick at jambs, has a hemmed edge, and is set in mastic to lay flat on the row lock sill. The staff recommendation was approval of the mock-up for 32 Lawrence with board and staff comments, and the motion was deferral of the mock-up panel. All right, we'll have the applicant present, and that would be Mr. Ted Risch, I believe.
If Mr. Rish has raised his hand digitally, we'll get you in here in just a second, Mr. Rish, and you will have the floor.
I'm looking for him. Let's see.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Mr. Rish, you have the floor.
Yeah, I don't see an option for camera on here, so
It's for the best.
that's fine.
I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. I'm sorry. I should have said it.
That's okay. I'm Ted Rish. I'm an architect at LS3P in Charleston, and I'll be presenting the mock-up panels for 31 and 32 Lawrence. This is for building A, B, and C. We previously had the mock-up C only reviewed, which you just.
Ted,
Sorry about that. You lost me for a second there.
I think that was my fault. Sorry.
That's okay. I appreciate everyone's time coming out to see the panels in the heat yesterday, and I'll move right into the building A panel, which I think if you shoot over to the next slide in this set, yeah, there we go. So starting on the left is building A. We have our stucco wall panel on the far left of your screen. FRP cornice at the top, and carriage door with a projected box bay. One note that I had in the application was we deviated from the approved design of the concrete slab edge. Our original concept was to form that into the concrete using an edge form, and we weren't really satisfied with how that turned out. So we are proposing this alternative design, which we had previously in an earlier iteration of the project, which is in a pre-finished aluminum channel. We feel like it's more successful and it gives us that consistent look that we're going for on the project. Moving down toward the center, we have the cast stone surround that appears on building A, right here around this window. We abbreviated that from the original approved design as it felt a little chunky when we looked at it on the mock-up originally. So we brought that profile in. One item that we noted yesterday on site was the vertical portion of this surround is actually going to have a window shoulder to sit on to resolve a sloped mortar condition on the corner there. We were asked at staff level to provide alternate brick selections for board consideration. So we have a 3x3 panel for the colors on this building. Our preference is this brick that's on the actual panel. It's called Ansley Park for building A. Moving down to the right of your screen, you'll see brick A2, which we have in the panel. It's called cobblestone. That is our preference. We do have another alternate panel for that one as well. The joint sealant for building A, we felt comfortable with, it's hard to see from this photo, but it was noted on site yesterday. We have 3 sealant selections in this area on this expansion joint. We actually, in the center, it's called, I believe it's called almond. We felt like that one matched the generalized brick and mortar color the best for the project. You can see up here on this FRP cornice, this is one of the options. It's called buckskin. It turned out a little bit light and it's installed around the windows currently. We do feel like the almond color is a little bit darker and it blends in a little bit better with the brick and mortar. Go on to the next slide, please. This is the mock-up panel for building B. We discussed this a little bit yesterday, but the preferred brick is the one that's actually installed in this 3x3. It's called EXP White. The reason we didn't install it in the panel is because we could only get the size of brick in the queen size, which our design calls for a modular size, which is in the actual panel. So there's a supply chain issue there getting that installed in the panel. But our preference is the EXP White here. For the balcony slab edge, it was discussed yesterday at the meeting. We had a 1 foot section of the edge painted the dark color to match the railings and the metals on the building, which is our preference as an alternate there. And then we have a cast iron column here on the building B balcony or canopy, supporting the canopy. The majority of these columns are engaged in the wall, and the design is for them to visually support the canopy. We do have one freestanding column similar to this that is out at the corner, and that cast iron column does terminate at the underside of the canopy. I think that's all I have for building B. I believe the sill on the window, there was a comment about it projecting out a little bit too far, and we tend to agree with that, and we're perfectly fine with abbreviating that sill projection right there on the wood window. You go to the next sheet, please. So this is mock-up panel C, which was previously deferred. A few things that we tightened up on this panel were the urn on this planter. There was a note that it had a drainage issue. There's a weep hole on the back side of it that was causing some discoloration on this cast stone cap here. So we decided to internally drain the urns. So we have that issue resolved there. The FRP, we tightened up the joints on, especially on this column, to get more consistent results there. And we installed there's a comment on the gutter detail. We installed that. It was incomplete at the last review, and we installed that for aesthetic purposes only. We're still resolving the waterproofing sequence on that gutter detail, but for the actual as-built condition, the aesthetics are in place as they will appear on the main building. So I think that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to review on our application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Risch. Let's see. We'll now move to public comment on this agenda item.
We have none.
Okay. All right. How about city and staff comments and recommendations?
We have some. All right. We're going to first address 10 Society Street mock-up. The staff comments are: number one, while GFRP is an acceptable material, there's a wide range of types and the specific product needs to be evaluated for durability. Submit individual samples for review. Number two, the color at sealants around fenestration elements, control joints, and lintels should better match the generalized brick mortar blended color. Number three, need to see if the cellular weeps may be replaced by rope weeps to be less conspicuous. Number four, brick mortar joints need to be kept as uniform, level, and plumb as possible. Number five, brick needs to be lipped at lintels for at least the lower two floors. Number six, the underside of the balcony is not shown due to lack of working room. Unless simply finished concrete, this needs to be shown somewhere. Number seven, welds at all metalwork need to be ground smooth and painted. Outside corners at miters need to be straight, clean, and smooth. And number eight, there is what appears to be corrosion beneath the upper toe out channel above the glazed section. All metal parts are to be smooth and clean. I feel like there was a 9. Okay. Yeah, I was like, I feel like there's a few more. We need to go back one page. Okay, there we go. Number 9, the spacing on the railing picket should be tightened up a little. Although it might meet code, the spacing looks a bit wide. Number 10, the precast elements generally look pretty good, if not a bit rough. These elements should be clean and smooth. We need to reiterate our typical notes for a really good QC QA program to avoid dings and nicks incurred through handling, storage, and placing. Number 11, do the window sills have to have the large bulky piece at the bottom? This seems extraneous in a more traditional flatter sill with a hemmed edge over sill flashing, which is set in mastic and painted the generalized brick mortar blended color. Windows may need to be reevaluated if not deemed high enough on the building to be easily seen. Number 12, the large precast window head needs to be lit to help conceal the lintel, and the cellular weeps at the bottom corners need to be avoided. Number 13, the dryer vent needs to be painted to match a generalized brick mortar blended color, which needs to be pinned down for each brick and mortar wall type. 14, all fixtures are to be electric and not gas. And I think I skipped a number. I don't think I skipped a comment, but
Okay.
Sorry, Lawrence, there when I input these. 16 says sealant mortar at precast coping needs to better match the coping color. 17, through wall flashing at the base of the walls needs to be minimized, held tight against the wall, and be painted to match the generalized brick mortar blended color. And 18, applicants should specifically identify any long lead time items requested for approval at this time. And the staff recommendation is, while there may appear to be many items needing attention, staff is confident that they can work with the applicant to address these items and recommends approval with the above noted conditions to be worked out with staff. If staff and applicant cannot resolve issues, a stop work order will be placed on the project and the mock-up will be brought back before the board for resolution. Okay, and then we're going to move over to 31 Lawrence Street mock-up. The staff comments are: number 1, the above items are incorporated where applicable. And then 2, sheet metal coping needs to show the elimination of the kicked out drip, with the bottom being held as tight against the wall as possible with the hemmed edge. Number 3, the CIP balconies are to have smoother, cleaner edges. Number 4, if the brick panel, which is proposed alternative to the brick on the wall, staff prefers the brick at the panel, finding the panel a bit richer and heavier feeling. Number 5, the dryer vent needs to be painted the generalized brick mortar blend color. 6, the cellular weeps at the projected brick window head should be rope weeps with lipped brick. 7, the color at sealants around fenestration elements, control joints and lintels should better match the generalized brick mortar blended color. The sealant where the canopy meets the wall needs to be the generalized brick mortar blended color. 9, some same notes regarding metalwork and railing as for 10 Society Street. 10, the 2 colors noted on the railing are close, but staff prefers the darker color. 11, it is understood that there are to be no exposed fasteners in any metalwork. 12, the canopy appears to have no good place to rest on the column capital. This needs to be restudied with a real breast or edge beam, making the transition from canopy to column capital. 13, while the tropical hardwood is very nice at the storefront below the canopy, the sill seems to project too much. The flashing at the base of this storefront needs to be painted to match the material at the wall. 14, the sealant between the wood storefront and the dark material to the sides needs to match the color of this darker material. 15, applicant should specifically identify any long lead time items requested for approval at this time. And the staff recommendation for 31 Lawrence Street mockup is, while there may appear to be many items needing attention, staff is confident that they can work with the applicant to address these items and recommends approval with the above noted conditions to be worked out with staff. If staff and applicant cannot resolve issues, a stop work order will be placed on the project and the mockup will be brought back before the board for resolution. Okay, and C, 32 Lawrence Street mockup. Staff comments are: number 1, board and staff have reviewed this before. 2, the above items are incorporated where applicable. 3, the trim piece between the bay and wall is loose and will need to be restudied. Any sealant required at this joint should match the generalized brick mortar blended color. 4, any light fixtures on this project should be electric and not gas. 5, flashing at the base of walls and storefront is to be painted to match the surface below. 6, the area at the top of the bay exhibits exposed fasteners. kicked out drip edges, and misaligned corner joints. The area needs to be restudied. 7, sealant joints on the porch are still generally too wide and need to be tightened up and kept more flush with the material profiles. 8, sealant between the brick walls and porch components are to match the generalized brick mortar blended color. 9, while GFRP is an acceptable material, there is a wide range of types, and the specific product needs to be evaluated for durability. Submit individual samples for review. It is noted that this material on the porch has already been damaged. Number 10, do the windowsills have to have the large bulky piece at the bottom? This seems extraneous, and a more traditional flatter sill with a hemmed edge over sill flashing, which is set in mastic and painted the brick mortar blended color, would be more appropriate. Windows may need to be reevaluated. Number 11, applicant should specifically identify any long lead time items requested for approval at this time. And number 12 are any items per site visit. And the recommendation is, while there may appear to be many items needing attention, staff is confident that they can work with the applicant to address these items and recommends approval with the above noted conditions to be worked out with staff. If staff and applicant cannot resolve issues, a stop work order will be placed on the project and the mock-up will be brought back before the board for resolution.
You're pretty consistent there.
I think
Okay.
that was about 120 rounds per minute. What do you think?
That was very impressive. So,
Okay, was that too fast? Because I knew there was a lot to get through, so.
no,
Nope,
fortunately, that's exactly what we went through at our site visit yesterday. So that should all sound very familiar to our board members and to the applicant. Seeing as we had no public comment and the city has completed its comments and recommendations, Mr. Risch, you have a 5-minute period should you choose to use it to respond to anything that the city has said. You don't have to use it if you don't feel like you need it.
Okay, the one item I was gonna hope to get some resolution on was the window sill nosing. It seemed like when we met on site yesterday and reviewed that, I thought everybody was on board with the design direction there. That piece was, it's a factory installed piece of the window that goes into the accessory groove, similar to the brick mold around the window. I just wanted to make that clear that it's a pretty traditional design as part of the window assembly. It's not a separate piece, so it's actually not there on the storefront. It's actually on the window. All those windows start at level 2. There might be 1 or 2 on the ground floor of building C, but you won't actually be able to see that from the street or from the right of way. But it is in fact part of the pre-finished aluminum window assembly. And it's due to the fact that our windows are recessed so far into the wall that we needed that projected sill nose to span the gap between the window assembly and the brick sill. If we don't have that, then we'll have to introduce a new material to span that gap, which will cause, a little bit of discontinuity in the waterproofing there, and just another element in the window assembly we don't really feel is necessary. So I just wanted to clarify that. And then obviously long lead time items that we are focused on at this point for the project is brick and windows. So. Thank you.
Okay. We will now move to board discussion and a vote, potentially a vote. What do my fellow board members have to say about this project?
I'll jump in very quickly on this. I don't really have a lot of comments. I know staff has spent a lot of time, and has produced an exhaustive list. I'll just go by method of exclusion here, the ones that I have concerns about. I actually think that those sill extensions on the windows are fine. That's a very typical thing. And I understand, they're using tabbed windows here, so they're trying to close a gap. And I saw no fault with that. And then let's see what else. The the cast iron, there was a discussion about the cast iron column, and I'm going to jump between buildings here, so I'm just going to be frenetic. But the cast iron column, there was some discussion about making sure that the ceiling of the canopy or deck above was designed such that it reflects a beam or joist that bears upon that column. And I think we all had a sense of what that meant. And I think that it's just a revision to the ceiling design that would achieve that. And it would be much improved other than just having that column sitting right above some bent, some field formed metal on the ceiling plane. I would really caution the team to guard that precast or cast stone, because there were some dings that were repaired, and it was very obvious where that happened. And similarly, to make sure that the mortar joints between those units are really well tooled, because that was a little bit of a rough spot that we noticed in the field. And a couple of things that I'm a little concerned about. It seems like staff's recommending that we abandon the kick at the base of copings and other flashings. That's now what I would consider to be a traditional detail, to make sure that you have a drip condition where you transfer from the metal to the facade material. That even shows up in 19th century or 18th century architecture, and I'm not opposed to it so long as it's clean and crisp. So I don't want to dissuade applicants from doing what is almost universally typical in architectural practice these days. And similarly, I say similarly and then I lose my train of thought. With through wall flashings, my studio's practice is to stop through wall flashings on brick masonry at the face of the joint. That's debatable now, but I think if we're going to accommodate a professional discretion and let people extend through wall flashings beyond the face of masonry, we really ought not to ask them to paint it, because that's a little tiny 3/8 of an inch strip of metal that occurs repeatedly throughout the facade. We're asking them to paint that and keep and maintain that paint coating. I think it would be better if an architect wants to, or a developer or applicant wants to project their through wall flashings beyond the face of masonry, just ask them to use copper or stainless or something that will weather appropriately. Lord knows we don't want aluminum or galvanized, but I think asking them to paint that's not really going to work in the long term. And that's the sum of my comments.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. White.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll go if you're
Yes, sir.
ready. A question to start with: what is the scupper material made of?
The scupper, the through wall scupper, it's pre-finished aluminum.
As we discussed yesterday on site, the pop rivets should not be visible or exposed, even if at some elevation where it's not visible from the street. They should not be exposed. Cut edges of roofing and flashing materials should not be exposed. Fasteners used for anchoring should be non-ferrous materials. The seal on the mahogany window, I agree. I felt that it just did extend a little too far. Thanks for cutting that back. It was unclear to me, even though I got down underneath and looked at it, how the bottom of some of the balconies were going to come together, and the small outlet that water would be draining the built-in gutters and the porches. I was unsure of where that water was going when it came out of that scupper. I agree with Jay. The seal extensions on those windows actually come with a groove for that seal extension to be applied. And, the way this wall is put together, I think that is better than adding an additional material to waterproof the window. Also, on the strip of through wall flashing, that would be, if it is extended through the joint and then turned down, it must be a non-ferrous material. I agree that painting that probably would not be successful a long time because the edge of that may be cut unless it's coated after it's been bent. So some type of non-ferrous material. And Mr. Chairman, I know that you gave us counsel yesterday on what I'm about to talk about, but I can't not bring it up because I feel like it's important. While it is not in our purview, the built-in gutters on the porches, once the system is worked out for installation, that could include a layer that extends outward from the gutter, not just in, because that cornice is sloped in and water that lands on the outside portion of that top of that cornice drains back into that gutter. And, then that drains down and, it could become visible because once that system is worked out, that coating extends to the outside of top of that cornice. I don't know, might not be, but I ask if everyone's willing that we ask Tori to make sure she looks at how that system is ultimately designed. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Right, and on the last note, Mr. Metters, to the extent that the dimensions or the construction of the system would affect anything that's visible from a public right of way, this board does in fact have purview over that. So it's something that Ms. Parrish, to the extent that it is in bounds, Ms. Parrish should take note of it, especially since it is not since there's not a finalized proposal in that regard. It may not be relevant if it's not visible from the streetscape, but if it is, or it affects some other detail that is, obviously that's something that is in our purview and that we're concerned about. So well said. Further comments from other board members?
This is Leon Scott. Just a quick question. If I could just get a little understanding of the underside of the balcony. I know it wasn't completed, but what happens at the underside when it's completed?
Are you talking about building A, B, or C?
B.
Okay, so buildings A and B, they have a textured acrylic coating for the underside of the balcony that goes all the way to basically to the drip line that returns on all three sides of the balcony.
Okay.
So it's not going to be exposed concrete. It's like a direct applied finishing system.
Okay. So there's no visible concrete. You won't see
No.
you won't be able to look up and see concrete. Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Further board comments or questions?
One thing that I forgot, and I should probably keep my mouth shut, but I think Leon was alluding to this. There's a condition where we have the aluminum plate on the face of the concrete cast in place concrete balcony.
Yeah.
We're talking about covering that gap somehow, maybe with a plate or some other thing, but also that all of that metal is so finely executed, and it really looks great. However, on the underside, you see exposed welds that are not ground, and they're perfectly done. Like, it's just stacked dimes, as they say. It's perfectly done. But considering the fine execution of the overall piece, I think that those welds should be ground as well, just so that it looks monolithic. No exposed welds. So if there aren't any other board comments, I might introduce a motion I mean, this, well, I'll introduce a motion with the preamble. I think this is a very well executed mock-up at this stage. The overall execution is very, very finely done and one of the better versions we've seen. So I'd like to introduce a motion for approval of each of the mock-ups with board and staff comments.
Okay. And
And I second that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Board and staff comments. The motion is is for approval of the mock-up with board and staff comments. I'll ask this as a procedural issue to either Lawrence and or Tori. Do we need to vote on them separately, or can we vote on them as a block since we appear to be of a mind?
I think since the motion is the same for all three, you can vote as a block.
I did too. I just wanted to know if anyone had any, especially with staff, had any different opinion. So, Mr. White, your motion, as I understand it, is approval of each of the three mock-ups with board and staff comments. Have I read that correctly?
That's correct.
And I have a second from, was it Mr. Scott?
Mr. Metters.
Mr. Metters. All right, I'll proceed to call the roll. Mr. Scott, how do you vote on the three mock-ups?
Yay in favor.
Yay in favor. Mr. Metters, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. White?
Yay in favor.
Ms. Sobchak? Yeah, that's a hand up, which traditionally for her has been a yay in favor. If you've changed your signals, Luda, please let me know.
Unfortunately, I think she's muted.
And she is, but a hand in the air is a yay in favor. So that's, we haven't had to do that previously. You may have missed that one. And I myself vote yay in favor, so it's unanimous. The mock-ups are approved. Mr. Risch, thank you for doing such a thorough job, including at our site visit yesterday. And
Thank
good luck
you.
to working with city staff on getting this one completion.
All right, appreciate you.
Mrs. Parrish, what is agenda item number 2 for this evening?
Okay, agenda item number 2. It's going to be 838 Morrison Drive. The request is for the approval of a mock-up panel. The building's not rated and it's in the historic corridor district. Okay. I'm going to run through previous staff comments from when you guys heard this before. That was on May 26, 2021. We had a few staff observations, and those were that, number one, the closure brick was explicitly denied in staff comments at the board final review, which were made part of the approval motion. Number two, after subsequent vigorous lobbying by the applicant to allow a representative sample of the closure brick on the mock-up for board comparison, staff acquiesced and agreed to the applicant to show this representative sample in a limited fashion. Number three, it was understood by staff at the time that if allowed, the closure brick would be used only at the lower portion of the building to help establish a clear base for the structure. Number four, applicant has used an excessive amount of the closure brick on the mock-up, showing it more extensively than as a simple representative portion, and is now showing it at what will be higher parts of the building on top of modular brick, violating the basic board principle of material tectonics. And number five, while staff agrees that the use of closure brick can be appropriate, alternatives to what is currently shown, its location and detailing need to be further studied. And then the comments were, number one, the detailing with this brick has proven to be challenging, and the applicant has been working on the simplification of some details to better accommodate the brick. Due to the more contemporary nature of the building, staff is not opposed to the simplification of some of this detailing. It should also be noted that the more complicated detailing occurs on the lower portions of the building, becoming more simplified as it goes up. Continue to work on the simplification and refinement to detailing with the closure brick. Number two, although it may be difficult to work out the coursing in some cases, wherever possible, eliminate mitered brick at outside corners. Number three, while staff has no problem with the modular brick, we do not think that the form and finish of the closure brick is suited to this building. Number four, staff has requested, although belatedly, that applicant provide alternatives to the proposed closure brick in the form of 3 or 4 small standalone sample panels, which, if the closure brick size were unavailable, could be presented with a modular size brick for board and staff comparison. Applicant has refused to do this, preferring to focus the board's attention on their preferred closure brick. Number five, while sealant colors are generally acceptable, continue to fine tune these while moving forward. Number six, eliminate the kicked out drip edge at the bottom edge at copings in lieu of a vertical hemmed edge space just far enough out from the face of brick to establish a drip nosing. This should be relatively tight with no building wrap being exposed as is currently shown. 7, due to its low elevation, flood panel anchorage isn't ideal, but recess the plates into the brick as shown and paint them the generalized brick mortar blended color. It is noted the applicant has proposed that lip brick at loose lintels will be carried up through the second floor and then returned to regular brick over lintel condition due to lessened visibility and the fact that these are almost always in shadow. Staff agrees with this approach as long as the lintels are painted the generalized brick mortar blended color of the wall above. And the staff recommendation was deferral of the mock-up for restudy with board and staff comments. And then board comments from May 26 were there are gaps at the top of mullion to lintel and bottom of mullion to metal piece. There are holes in the brick showing. In these times we need to be the best schedulers we can be to avoid delays. Would deny for restudy. Agree with staff recommendations. Closure brick looks cartoonish. Agree with staff and board comments, agree with staff. And the motion was deferral for restudy with board and staff comments. Okay. We're going to show you some previous mock-up photographs. Whoops. We're zooming. And then we have some photos from the supplemental mock-up.
Okay, we'll try. Thank you.
Okay, and then for the applicant, we've got, I'm going to look for Chuck Travis, Rick Kamakaris, and I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher all kinds of names today. So it's best if I not do that. All right, I'm going to make some panelists here and get everybody in. Okay, I got, I'm looking for one more.
Okay.
Chuck, can you hear me?
I can hear you,
Okay,
George.
the only person that I can't find from your team is Rick.
Curlin.
Do you know if he's on?
Rick Kamakaris is with me.
Okay.
Rhea Curlin should be joining us as well.
Okay.
See her?
Miss Curlin is there. She just needs to unmute.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Jay.
Who would like to go first on behalf of the applicant?
I'll start us off, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your time. And as Ms. Parrish was just telling you, it was the end of May when we had our last discussion. The panel that you see on the screen right now was the first panel that we presented to you. We've continued to work closely with staff, Ms. Parrish and Mr. Courtney, to go through those comments. And I appreciate her reading through those comments again, because they've been very meaningful to us, just like it has been all the way through the entire BAR process. And we take them seriously. And so this is where we really hatched the idea of leaving the first panel intact, so we would have it for comparison and contrast. And we developed the idea of creating a separate panel, which could be the separate second sheet. If you could go to that, please. And the idea behind having this second panel, we also met, we collected brick samples and actually drove to meet with Ms. Parrish and Mr. Courtney in front of their office building and show various brick options to them, discuss it. We also talked about the construction of this panel and how one of the comments was to deal with simplifying the details so that it's more complementary to the more modern aesthetic of the building that we've been using all along, and we felt like the detailing is more appropriate. So we talked through all of those details. It's been a conversation that's been ongoing, and we certainly appreciate all of their help and assistance, and obviously being very willing to work with us to get the panel that you guys visited yesterday and had the opportunity of meeting Ms. Curlin on site to discuss. We do feel like the process has been extremely helpful to us. And what I would like to do, since you had the opportunity to meet with Maria on site yesterday, I'm going to turn it over to her. And we're going to talk about the positive things that we feel came out of that conversation. We also want to address some of the things that you had concerns on that we put additional thought into, and want to give you those responses as well. So Maria.
Thank you, Chuck, very much. I apologize. My camera is not on, so I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but we'll just make
It's
it
awful. It's terrible.
I apologize, but you met me yesterday, so you know I'm real. This is not a virtual person. So just to clarify my role, I'm a construction manager on a Morrison yard job, and I'm there on a daily basis. So it was just natural for me to be part of this presentation today, as well as I was your host yesterday. So I wanted to just bring your attention to the images that are part of this submittal. Unfortunately, the top part of the cornice in a supplemental, that's the image, if we start looking at pictures, the top part of the cornice of the supplemental mock-up panel was still wet when these pictures were taken. So the brick looks much darker on these pictures in the application than actually what you saw yesterday in the field. So I would just try to ask you to remember actually how all that looked like yesterday. The color was much lighter and blended better. So the way we approach this supplemental panel is per direction of Lawrence and Tori. We decided to provide a new simplified design besides the original mock-up panel, so you can see the difference of work we provided and want to present to you today. So the new supplemental panel has much more simplified details per the request of the previous review. And there were a lot of different comments about the closure brick. So I want to point out that due to the closure brick discussion with the staff, we decided to leave the closure brick on the base part of the building that was represented in the images, because that was more appropriate to the scale of the building and the site itself. But the closure brick was removed from the top part of the more simplified cornice and replaced by the modular brick. One more change that I really want to point out is that the previous closure brick was a wire cut, and the closure brick that's currently in the supplemental mock-up is, I'm sorry, the brick on the supplemental panel is the wire cut closure brick in lieu of the blade cut that you were reviewing the first time around. And I think everyone present thought that that was a more successful brick design, but I'll leave that up to further discussion after our presentation. One more item that also was updated, we on the mock-up panel, we try to leave everything that is going to be changed and no longer applicable to the building as is. And we were not trying to really update those elements. So I just want to reference that there was a comment about the holes on the original mock-up panel, and that was actually part of the cornice that is no longer being used. So I just want to point that out as well. The ceiling colors on our mock-up panel were revised to better blend the generalized brick mortar colors per the staff recommendation. And we also, to add to the more simplified approach of the detailing of our new mock-up panel, we eliminated the kicked out drip edge at the copings. And you were able to see that yesterday, that the copings were much tighter to the brick edge on the new supplemental panel. Another item that I really wanted to point out, and we reviewed it yesterday, is that our floodplain panel Anchorage was much better resolved now. Not only that we recessed it into the brick, but we also painted the Anchorage plates with color that was closer to more generalized brick mortar blended color. And that's also the same color that we were using on painting our lintels. Also, another comment was tied to our mullion coverage in between the windows, and the center mullion was revised. We're using the larger panel to actually provide better coverage and have a tighter edge that can be caulked, and it will not have any gaps as previously noted by the board members. I think overall, we presented a more simplified design with a different brick shape, if I can say, and size. And we hope that you agree that it's a more successful design. I also want to use this opportunity to talk about some concerns that some of your team members had yesterday. I think Mr. James had said something about or mentioned concern about metal fasteners on our mock-up. And I wanted to say that we designed the whole project with concealed fasteners to the greatest extent possible. But if there were some fasteners that by necessity had to be located at a more exposed locations, like the one that was pointed out where the panel is under an angle under the window, where the connection was a little bit more visible than in any other typical location, that we're going to try to have the attachments in a more conspicuous location, and that we're going to use the color matching to make sure that attachments are matching the background so they're not visible. And also, I think Mr. J had a concern about the mitered corners. We did try our best to use mitered corners only really where the corners are really needed and required, necessary. And in situations where we needed a pitch to be required in both directions just for horizontal surface to shed water. And also we were trying with all of this to align with the comments that staff recommended or asked us for, and that is to try to align the vertical joints. So between all these different situations, we thought that we did the best we could with the overall design. I also noticed that in your comments in a previous review, you were asking us to identify the long lead time items. That was something that was available. So I just want to mention that at this point in time, we do have items on our mock-up panel that do have a long lead time items, especially the brick, as well as the windows and some other elements. So please keep that in mind during your review. And I think that will be all. I'm not sure if our project architect, Rick Kimakaris, has anything else to add, but that this will be all that I had to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria. Anything else from the applicant to add?
No, thank you, Maria. I think you summed it up really well.
Great. That was a very responsive summary to our conversations and issues raised yesterday.
Thank you.
Ms. Parrish, do we have any public comment on this project?
Not.
I did not think so. Okay, that being the case, we will move to city staff comments and recommendations.
Okay, city staff comments. Number one, see related notes on item 1 of this agenda for typical issues where applicable. And we can probably discuss those if needed. Number 2, this bears some explanation as follows. A, staff had originally advocated against the closure brick. Applicant was very enthusiastic about closure brick, and staff subsequently agreed for applicant to show a portion for the 2 lower floors on the mock-up. B, initially applicant was a bit over enthusiastic and placed the same brick high on the high-rise section of the mock-up. Staff objected to this reversal of tectonics. C, Applicant was having issues with detailing and wished to simplify them. Staff advocated for the simplification, believing in part that this was anachronistic on a new contemporary style building and simply muddled the language of the building, as well as some being too high on the building to effectively read. D, applicant has built a supplemental mock-up showing the simplified detailing, an alternative closure brick per staff's request, and colors proposed. Number 3, staff prefers the blade cut brick, although wire cut might be used at the top of the high-rise section. And the staff recommendation is approval with the clear differentiation of what board and staff have approved, and staff to work with applicant on any unresolved issues. If staff and applicant cannot resolve issues, a stop work order will be placed on the project and the mock-up will be brought back before the board for resolution.
Very good. Excellent. The applicant is afforded a 5-minute rebuttal or clarification period if they choose to exercise it. If not, that's okay too. Anyone want to speak on behalf of the applicant as to city and staff comments or recommendations?
Maria, do you have any comments in regards to what we've heard?
No, I think that we had a further discussion in regards to the brick with Mr. Lawrence, and I would prefer if he can just provide better recommendation when it comes to brick shape and color.
Yeah, I think that staff is fine with the blade cut brick up until it goes up very high on the high rise, as shown on this second mock-up, and then switch to wire cut at that level, just because it's a good ways up, and really at that point only see it from a long ways off.
Would you mind going back to the staff comments just so I could get them just one more time, please? Thank you. Ooh, too far. Okay. I was primarily concerned about number 3, what Lawrence was just talking about. I just want to make sure I understood. We certainly have no issues with that. We like both of those brick selections, the wire cut and the blade cut. And we certainly have no issues working with staff to make sure that we get the details and the building components put together the way that we've discussed with them. So, Mr. Chairman, I think that's all we have. Except I just want to reiterate is that we really do need, if for some reason we don't move forward, we obviously have a lot of pressure on us to get windows and brick ordered. So if you'll just take that into consideration, I know you don't like the piecemeal approvals, and we certainly respect that and can appreciate it. We just are up against a lot of deadlines, just like all of you understand, because of some of the COVID shortages. So thank you once again.
We don't like it, but we understand, and we're living in the real world as we try to get these logistics of supply lines sorted out. We understand.
Thank you.
And Lawrence, just to be clear, I think after that clarification with Maria and what you said on the record, I think we're on the same page regarding the brick, correct? I'm getting a yes. Okay. So we will now move to board member discussion and a potential vote on this mock-up agenda item. What do my fellow board members have to say about this particular project?
Mr. Chairman, I had a quick question
Yes, sir.
that the applicant may be able to answer. Is there an appreciable difference in the cost or availability of blade cut versus wire cut brick? And is there any real rationale for changing between one and the other by floor?
Jay, I would say no. There's nothing appreciably different. And as far as production time, there's no difference.
Okay.
It's a Taylor clay brick, and essentially both finishes are essentially the same.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, they're very close in practice, especially when you hike them 40 feet in the air. I think the big issue here is the module of the brick, and I think staff granted the applicant an opportunity to press their case for what they intended with the brick module, but I think that in the balance, I think it is better that the larger module be at the ground floor, as staff is recommending, and then we move to a modular brick above that. So the closure brick, I guess, up to the second floor level, and then modular above that. The rest of staff comments I'm comfortable with.
Okay. I know this incorporated both the question and the comment, which I think is fine. Other board comments, questions, or discussion? I'll just jump in and add that I like the massing on the new mock-up, and I think that it helped to build up some scale and see how vertical the structure is. And I think that when you do that, you see that the changing and the ordering of the massing is actually helpful and attractive. I think it was a thoughtful reduction, and I agree that the simplification of the elements benefited the overall aesthetic of the project. And I'm glad that the applicants were so receptive to the information or concerns that were being raised by both staff and at our visit to the site yesterday. Much improved. Further board comments or recommendations?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
For approval of the mock-up panel with comments made by staff and board members.
Mr. Metters, your motion, as I understand it, is for an approval of the mock-up with the incorporation of staff and board comments.
Yes, sir.
Okay, is there a second?
I will.
Mr. White seconds. I'll therefore proceed to call the roll. Mr. Scott, how do you vote on this item?
Yay in favor.
Ms. Sobchak. We may have lost her to mute again, so I'm going to scroll down to her image. Ms. Sobchak, how do you vote? Oh, that's a yay in favor. Mr. White?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metters?
Yay in favor.
And myself, yay in favor. So the mock-up incorporating board and staff comments passes unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you to the applicant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Parrish, what do we have for agenda item 3 this evening?
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 3. This is 578 Meeting Street. The request is for conceptual approval of a new mixed-use structure with parking, incorporating a small remnant historic structure. The project is not rated. It's in the East Side neighborhood, and the historic structure was constructed in 1929, and this is in the Historic Corridor District. And for the applicant's presentation, give me a second here to get some people elevated. Give me just a moment.
Take your time. We're doing very well on making headway this evening.
We have Jimmy Walker already as a panelist. We need to find Ross Kirby.
I think he's a panelist as well.
Okay. Let's see him.
No.
Look around one more time. I saw him earlier. Oh, I found him. Okay, I'm promoting him to panelist. Okay, Jimmy and okay, we've got them both here. Okay.
And Tori, you didn't have further introductory remarks. You're ready to proceed to the applicant's presentation.
Oh, are you referring to context slides?
Yes, I didn't know. If you want to waive them, that's fine. I didn't know what your plan.
I apologize. We're down to like 50% staff this week, so
that's okay. I'm not upset. I just wanted to make sure we didn't skip over something in our haste.
No, we that just got overlooked. I apologize.
That's
but
okay. It's okay.
You know where it is.
I do know where it is. I drove by there yesterday.
Yeah, we were all out there a few months ago to review the demolition request. So yeah, so this will be the newly proposed. But
Very
thanks
good.
for thanks for noticing. We know you appreciate the context slides now.
I do. It helps orient me. Looking at it from each cardinal direction is
Absolutely.
actually so just
Good.
I like it. So that being said, if we're ready and the applicants are in the room, the applicants have the floor. Who would like to lead off for them?
That would be Ross Kirby, the principal with Dynamic Design, the architect for the project.
Good evening, Mr. Kirby. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's time tonight for letting us get together and present this conceptual package for you. Tori, are you the one driving the presentation?
No.
No, Lawrence is driving it.
Okay, Lawrence, go to page 3, please. There's a few items on context I want to touch on that are relevant to the project. So, as you said, you're all familiar with the site. You've driven by it recently when we had the demolition request. Some of the key context that I want to point out is that a majority of the projects in the surroundings are 2.5 story residential. There's a church directly to our southeast, the chapel there, yes, and then one just to the north across Stewart Street. Across Nassau to the east is a very impressive water tower, water tank. And just to the west of us across Meeting Street is a recently completed 5.5 or 6 story multifamily project that's set back a little bit from the street and has similar retention of a partial historic structure on Meeting Street. So if you'll go to page 8, please. We'll go past some of the historic context. These are all part of the previous demolition package. So some images here on the top left of some of the existing context, some of the 2.5 story residential uses and 2 churches, or the one chapel that's on the southeast of our site, as we see on the top right and bottom left of the page. And then on the bottom middle of the page, you see a portion of the existing Regis Mill industrial facility that we're maintaining a portion of. And if you'll go to page 9, please. The bottom left image, you can see closer to street level of the water tank that's to our east. And we'll go back one page. I apologize for skipping around a little bit. I want to make sure we cover everything in a way that makes sense, but putting together a package that puts everything in order would get repetitive. So back one more page, please. Is on the top left of the page, and we'll see the church that's to the north of our site. And on the bottom left of the page is the recently constructed multifamily project that is across Meeting Street, was directly across Meeting Street from our site. And highlighted in that bottom middle image is the portion of the Regis Mill that we are preserving and incorporating into our project. So then if you'll go to page 18, one of the main goals of this project was to take what is essentially a completely paved and we feel underutilized and unengaged industrial site and really try to convert it into an integral part of the broader community. And we want to incorporate a mix of residential and some light commercial in the form of some live work units that really create an engaging public realm where right now there really isn't one. And you can see in the way we organize the building, and I'm sure you've all reviewed this package before, or at least some of them are familiar with this, so I won't belabor the obvious, but we've oriented our parking deck and our services on the east side off Nassau, which are facing the water tank and not directly fronting on other residential properties or commercial properties. So we felt that was an appropriate way to organize our service areas. And then along the western and southern portions of the site, we've really made an effort to pull our building back and contribute some additional space to the public realm beyond the 10-foot sidewalk that's required. So it ranges in depth between 14 and 18 feet, 4 feet and 18 feet, in addition to the 10-foot sidewalk. And we're turning that space over and converting it into a number of different public use types. So really our approach to dealing with the public realm of this project and our goal has 4 parts. We have an incorporation of some light commercial live work units and amenity spaces along Meeting and Johnson Streets on the west and south sides of the site. We have more that we're going to talk about how we're reintegrating the Regis Mill building into our design and rehabilitating and giving it a new life. We have some additional setback, as I mentioned, along the west and south side for public uses, and we've also along the north Stewart Street and a portion of the southeast corner of the site integrated some residential stoops and additional landscaped areas to create some vertical transition between the two spaces. So if you'll go to page 10, please. The first time I want to talk about is one of the things that's really driving how this project interacts at the street level is our integration of these live work units and amenity spaces on Meeting and Johnston Street. And in this image, you can see is an up-close rendering along Meeting Street of the existing Regis Milk facade that's on in the foreground. And then off to the left side of the image, the ground floor is our amenity space, our club room. And what we've done with this is to take the Meeting Street building and the portion that we're maintaining and to reopen the openings, the window openings that were bricked up. And because the existing structure behind it, the roof is failing and not really able to be rehabilitated without being replaced, we tried to come up with an idea on how we can use this space without just gutting the facade and leaving it. So what we planned is for our live work units, which are directly behind the Regis Milk facade and extending all the way up to the portion where the building jumps out to the north there, and create an outdoor terrace that's for the live portion, the residential portion on the second floor of those units, so that there's activity that's a little more secluded and private, but there's still activity that happens above the existing facade. And we've created trellises and canopy shading structures up there that relate to some of the other architecture on the building. And then down within the existing regional building itself, what we've tried to do is convert that into open outdoor space that's semi-private in a way that as you're walking down the sidewalk and people are going to the different storefronts, you get kind of the nature of what you have in a lot of downtown Charleston, where you may see something kind of off to your side. It may not be your destination, but it piques your interest and draws you in. And the space inside is one that's associated with the live work units and that we were envisioning potentially as kind of a wine bar, outdoor seating restaurant type area, but that's unconditioned. So it's a way to give new life to the existing building that doesn't currently have. In addition, you'll see to the north and south sides of that existing facade that we've held the building back further and created some additional canopies and shading structures to create these variety of semi-public spaces that are more public extensions of the public realm. So that there are seating areas, whether it's dining or outdoor eating or just outdoor seating areas that are associated with the work portion of the live work units that are directly adjacent to them. The balconies that we've added on the second floor are not just balconies for the live portion units of the live work units, but also serve as a way to create shade structures on what is the west facing side of the project, which is, as you're obviously aware, one of the guiding principles in the VAR recommends for western and southern facing facades. And then the last thing on this particular slide is at the northwest corner, as you see on the left side of the image, we have incorporated double height space. So it's a full 2-story volume club room. And even though that portion is physically closer to the sidewalk, there's substantially more visual glazing between the indoor and outdoor portions. So during the day, as you're walking by, you can see in very clearly, and at night, the light from inside comes out. So it's a way of breaking down the barrier between the indoors and the outdoors, even though the spaces themselves are physically very close together. And if you'll go to page 18, please. I wanted to talk a little more about the
Page
18.
Okay.
Thank you. There you go. Perfect. So as you can see, the spaces I was talking about along Leading Street on the west side of the project, sort of in the very middle there, the gray portion is the revitalized Regis building and the sort of semi-private interior / unconditioned space that's the wine bar. Just to the north of that is the more semi-public spaces. That's where it's the deepest. It's about 18 feet or so, in addition to the 10-foot sidewalk. And then the size of the space tapers down just south of the Regis Milk facade. And it's still a public space that is covered by shading elements that, again, serve as balconies for the living units above. Along the south side, we have a little bit of a unique situation because there is an existing drainage easement that we cannot build any physical structures on, but that we can landscape and hardscape. And so we wanted to make the best use possible of that and create a lot of public outdoor space with additional landscaping and seating areas that we are going to continue to develop, obviously, as we move through the project. But they really present an open, almost a plaza of sorts that's with the 10-foot sidewalk, about 25 feet in total depth along those live work units. And then the residential stoops we've added along the southeast corner of the site and the northeast corner because of the floodplain elevations and our need to keep residential uses above that level. All the residential uses that are ground floor are held up at least 2 feet to 4 feet above grade. And so we have stoops where you can step down, and we have additional landscaping and sidewalks to tie those more private areas into the public realm and create not only a visual separation vertically, but also horizontally with the landscape screening and almost garden style plantings that are in front of them. And then last, along the very center portion of the north facade along Stewart Street, we have our leasing and co-working spaces, which are part of the amenity package. And they allow for access off the street, but play off the same language as the rest of the building. So that's our main approach to how we manage the public realm. We've also got additional separation we wanted to maintain between our property and the church to the southeast, given that we are proposing a taller structure than what's existing on their property. So we've held our building back further from that side for additional landscaping and separation, both physically and visually with the landscaping itself. And we're also considering additional screening in there, whether it's more landscaping or fencing structures, but some of that will be dependent upon what we're allowed to do with within that drainage easement. What we're requesting with this project, because we are split between two height districts, the western portion of the project is in the High District 5, and the eastern portion is in the High District 3.5. So what we're proposing is additional request for half a story to go to 4 stories on the eastern portion, and a full story on the western half to go to from 5 to 6. And our justification for architectural merit, I want to run through a few items on. I'm sure you've looked through the bulk of our presentation, and we tried to go through and really take in the BAR's guiding principles and apply as many or all of them as we could to this building, and really try and work within those guidelines for developing the project to justify our architectural merit. So if you could please, we're going to skip a few pages ahead because I want to cover a few specific things to page 31. And so we put in diagrams and exhibits for each of the guiding principles and ways we believe we try to incorporate those things into the project. So in this particular one, what I want to talk about is our extensive use of brick and natural stone and glass to create what is from all appearances a single-story double height base to the building. Because our intent is to, as much as possible, mitigate the appearance of this building as 6 stories. And in doing so, we've incorporated a lot more glazing that's full height on the first 2 stories of the building. And we provided a cast stone trim piece above the second floor to create a base for the project, and then switch to a different material above to further delineate the base from the 4 stories above, to create that visual appearance of a 4-story over 1 as opposed to 5 over 1 building along this 6-story portion. The next thing we've done, you'll go to page 47. Excuse me, 32, just the next page. There you go. Perfect. Is what's really important to us is using authentic materials throughout. So we've stayed away from composite products and gone with natural products. Brick, we have stone, we have stucco that we're proposing as well. And the idea is that we're working within that palette in areas where it's very prominent at the main corners, all the exterior facades, and using them to break up the building massing, which, as I'm sure you noted, takes up the entire city block. So it's important that it be visually distinguishable from one portion to the next and not feel like one massive block of a building. And breaking up the materials and using authentic materials to do that is how we've approached managing that issue. And one thing you will note in this particular corner is that the implementation of the more vertical elements of the project and carrying the pilasters all the way up through the top of the building is a part of the design language we've incorporated throughout the entire building, whether it's in the 6-story portion or the 4-story portion. And even if you look at the elements in this corner where there may be some elements that if you look at in isolation, like the glazing at this corner on the upper 4 floors, may appear horizontal on its own. And if you look at the entire composition of this corner, the way it's tied together from the top of the building to the bottom creates a vertical element that draws your eye up and really extends the verticality of the architecture. You can see in this image, and also if you'll go to the next page, that we've made extensive use of glass in the ground floor for visual transparency. So in this diagram, you can see all the areas of the ground floor where we have the live work units where we've incorporated double height glazing that's full floor to ceiling glazing in both the ground floor commercial portion of the project or portion of the live work unit and the residential portion above. The only place where we don't have that double height glazing is at the areas just to the north and south of the Regis Mill facade, which you can see bumped out on the Meeting Street side. And that's so that those areas don't compete with what's intended to be one of the focal points of the center of the project on that side. If you will go to page 36, please. As I mentioned before, one of the key principles on south and west facing facades is the incorporation of shading elements. You can see on the northwest corner of the project that we have some smaller canopies that are integrated, into the storefront of the double height volume that is the club space there. The sort of double blades orange that you see along Meeting Street are the balcony and trellis at the level 2 elevation. And then directly above that, we have a pitched standing seam awning to create additional shading and variation of the facade. And then the center portion of the Regis Mill, as I mentioned before, we have another variation of that same louvered open trellis that we're using at the Sky Lounge, which you'll see on the right side of the image. So we have a portion of the project where we're stepping down the building and creating an outdoor terrace at our top floor, and we have a full open louvered sun shading element in that location. On the south side, because we're restricted in what can and cannot project out over our drainage easement, what we've chosen to do is take our storefront at the ground floor and recess it back into the building. So it serves 2 purposes. One, it creates a degree of shading at those entrances, which is one of the design principles. And it also creates sort of a minor but important expansion of the public sidewalk, in that recesses like that really serve as a way to draw you in visually without having to provide lots of excessive signage that says enter here or this is where this store is. It's a way to naturally draw people into the places in the building where we want them to go. If you'll go to page 29, please. Or excuse me, 47. Sorry, skipped a line. I want to talk a little bit about the overall massing of the project and the rhythm we try to incorporate. So, as I mentioned before, carrying these vertical brick pilasters all the way up the building for such a long block face is the way we've chosen to manage, incorporating not only the verticality of the design, but also the rhythm and balance of the site. You can see that we've got a portion of the west end where we've intentionally left out a pilaster so that we can draw attention to what is going to be the main part of the project that people see as they come south along Main Street towards Charleston. And along the eastern side, we have a similar approach so that the overall massing is balanced. And then in the center, we've kept those same type of pilasters so that we can sort of frame the location of the Regis Milk building. And then we let the portions in between those various masses kind of fade a little bit on the upper levels and have enhanced them at the ground 2 floors with the balconies and awnings. So if we'll go to the next page. You can see on the south side of the site where we have the 6-story portion on the left, we have our Sky Lounge where we're starting to step down, and then we're down to our 4-story portion. And then we have a pretty significant separation between ourselves and the chapel to our east or our southeast. To respect that the context of that transition and really try and mitigate what is obviously a higher density in an area with very low density. We'll go to the next page, please. Along the south side of the site, we have the frontage of our parking deck where you can see we've incorporated a lot of the same design language with our vertical pilasters and brick colors and materials, so that the parking deck doesn't feel like it's sticking out like a sore thumb. The design language and materials are part of the same part and parcel as the rest of the project. The thing where this varies a little bit is that we've put in some fabric mesh screening into the open panels of the garage to mitigate any light spillage from inside. There are spandrel panels that come up to the height required to block any headlights, but the mesh screening is more to prevent people from actually seeing into the garage and seeing cars and lights, and also prevent light from spilling out into the neighborhood. And if you'll go to the next page. Again, you can see on the right side, this is the north facade where we have our more public facing areas, our club room. And as you move further west on the page, we have our, at the ground floor, we have our co-working space. So there are stoops and stairs leading up to that. And then we have our leasing area where we've incorporated additional signage and canopy and stairs to really draw attention to that and bring people in without making it a focal center point of the entire project. And then we use the same language on this side, same material, same language as on the other parts, but we've lightened up the color of the stucco so that it's, being a lower building, appears less massive with the lighter color and still complements the masonry colors and the other darker stucco color that we're using at the window infills. And while we're on this, I think it's important to point out that we've made an effort to vary not only the number and size of windows, but the type. I think we probably still have some work to do there in possibly unifying the windows into a more consistent approach so that there are fewer types than what we show now, but still an adequate variety so that it doesn't feel like there's a cookie cutter approach to the window placement. And then if you will go to page 8, actually, I already covered that. Actually, I think that was the last item I wanted to cover. So I think and I'm happy to elaborate on anything you have questions about or want me to speak more about, but also want to be respectful of our time limits and give everyone an opportunity to be heard. So I think based on what our approach has been to the intentional integration of the BAR's guiding principles into the overall building design, specifically with a focus on enhancing and engaging the public realm where really none currently exists. I think we've made a pretty strong case for requesting the additional half story on the rear portion and full story on the front portion. But like I said, I'm happy to entertain any questions or clarifications you'd like me to make.
Thank you, Mr. Kirby. Let's see, we'll move on to public comment. I do believe we have some on this item, both from our community organizations as well as a couple of individual commenters. Is that right, Ms. Parrott?
That's correct. I'm going to start letting them in. We'll start with Erin Minnigan. I'm promoting her to panelist. Erin, when you're ready. Erin, can you hear us?
Hi, yes, I can. Thanks, Tori. This is Erin Minnigan with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society feels this proposal falls significantly short of what this prominent meeting street site deserves, and we ardently urge the board to move for denial. This is a massive project spanning nearly an entire city block, and there needs to be more of a meaningful attempt to break up the massing and better respond to the public realm, including providing more setback relief and green space along Meeting Street. There appears to be the start of breaking up the building into 3 primary masses, but this definition and differentiation needs to go much further. The design also could be characterized as anywhere architecture and makes no attempt to relate to Charleston's unique character, which is further reinforced by the low quality material palette. Materials like cast stone, stucco over frame, mesh panel, and aluminum need to be reevaluated and upgraded significantly. While we appreciate the attempt to create a different expression at the corner element, the large rectangular windows emphasize the horizontal nature of the building and go against the guidance of the BAR principles to utilize vertical proportions per Charleston's traditional building patterns. There are also far too many window types on the building, and the recessed porches create large, uninviting voids. We are also greatly concerned that the historic Regis Milk facade is not respectfully incorporated into the design, but is rather overwhelmed and ignored by the homogeneous building facade directly behind it. There should be greater effort to better distinguish the historic building, to allow it to better read along the Meeting Street streetscape and help tell the story of the evolution of the site. Finally, given the significant issues with the architecture, we do not feel the request for additional height is warranted. We particularly feel additional height on the parking garage should not be awarded. This is the portion of the building where the design and the materials are weakest, and it's questionable if it exceeds the height request allowance, as there are 5 levels of parking facing Nassau Street, and it's taller than the 4-story building component directly adjacent. We strongly feel projects of this scale best benefit from engagement with the community, and we're disappointed the applicant did not reach out to collaborate with us prior to the submittal. But we always remain open to working with project teams to help guide proposals. However, due to complete restudy needed of height, scale, mass, and architectural direction, we urge the board to deny the project as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Minnigan. And I have Mr. Schwebler with us.
Yes, this is Justin Schwebler with Historic Charleston Foundation.
Yes, sir.
I would first like to state that we were disappointed to see this application submitted to the BAR without prior engagement from the design team with Historic Charleston Foundation. We find that seeing presentations well in advance of public meetings helps to create a constructive discourse between all parties and leads to a more productive and satisfactory outcome, especially on large development projects like this. That being said, this block of Meeting Street is a prominent entry corridor to the city and will set an architectural tone and precedent for how this part of Meeting Street redevelops. With such an important place along one of the main arteries into Charleston, this site deserves a building of the highest architectural standards of material application and design. The building is presented as a cookie cutter example of the standard 5/1 residential apartment buildings that we see in every city across the country, and unfortunately are appearing more and more frequently here in Charleston. The applicant is asking for an additional story for architectural merit and context. While a standardized design can have merit, this building is completely lacking in any sort of refinement, detail, interest, material quality, or style. The argument that a 6-story apartment building surrounded by single-story residential and commercial structures fits into its context cannot be justified. The primary corner of the building has a massive horizontally accentuated windows, something with the BAR design guidelines specifically advise against. It's also covered in gray stucco on frame cladding, which is known to be a problematic construction method at this scale. Material changes are not a successful way of providing a meaningful breakup of a facade, and there should be several recessed portions on the Meeting Street and Stewart Street elevations to create better relief from the sidewalk and provide architectural interest. The window depths in the stucco portions of the building are also very flat and need to be recessed or have applied trim to add visual depth. Sadly, it's almost easy to ignore the preserved facade of the old dairy factory that has been incorporated into the design. The historic facade has been completely squashed under the surrounding mass of the 6-story apartments, and there's nothing to allow for the interpretation of the former building as anything but a strange projection from the new storefront. There should be more study in how to incorporate this historic building into the new structure that is complementary of the architecture and history of this preserved facade. The proposed garage on Nassau Street needs a complete redesign. There is plenty of precedent around the city for ways to help break up the monolithic form of parking garages and add architectural interest. We're also concerned that the scale of this garage will dominate the Grace Middleton Chapel AME. More careful attention needs to be paid to this corner of the development in order to be respectful of the church and its community. The applicants could look into wrapping the south side of the garage in residential units to help mask this portion of the structure from the church. This corridor of Meeting Street deserves better, and Charleston should demand the highest standards of architectural design, especially at such an important gateway into the city. We must recommend denial of the application for conceptual approval at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schwebler. I believe we have some additional written comments that have been submitted to me. Tori, the ones that I have submitted pursuant to the rules and by the deadline are from Lynn Hanlon and Patrick Napolsky. Does that sound correct to you?
That is correct. That's what I
I
have.
have those, and so I'll read them into the record. This is from Lynn Hanlon, 67 Meeting Street, Charleston. I urge the board to deny this project as presented. While the developers are saving the historic Regis Milk Building, overall the project is too massive and overwhelms the Regis facade and neighboring structures. The proposed style does not integrate into surrounding structures. As proposed, the project does not merit an exception for an additional story. It needs to be further studied and brought back with a more sensitive plan. And then from Mr. Napolsky, 28 Hanover Street, 578 Meeting. No, I don't know what that's in reference to. Let me read the body of his note. The proposed design does not appear to be sympathetic to the historic features that characterize its setting and context as the plain language of the Charleston standard so requires. Rather, this is just another example of a 5/1 design that has plagued this portion of the peninsula. Please consider denying the application for this design and ask the developer to resubmit a design that will present a high quality tactile and visual experience to the passerby. Have I missed any public comments, Tori? Looks like a no.
You have not. You've got them all.
Great. So at this point, public commentary is concluded. And so we will move to city staff comments and recommendations.
Right. A few staff observations on 578 Meeting Street. For section 54-306F Heights District 5, the BAR may permit an additional story based on architectural merit and context. Number 2, as taken from the ordinance, section 54-306-17, architectural merit means a project that reflects exemplary architectural and urban design, utilizes the highest level of materials and finishes, and contributes to the public realm as outlined in the Board of Architectural Review principles. And number 3, while this is a conceptual level review, because a finding of architectural merit and context is being pursued, there are staff comments which address the elements of architectural merit, and these might otherwise be handled at a preliminary review. And then staff comments, number 1, consider embracing the asymmetry caused by the perimeters on this site. The historic structure is not at the exact center of the buildable footprint, and the relationship of Meeting Street to this block is angled. The rhythm of 5 similarly sized alternating bays, AB, ABA, may be too forced or stagnant given these parameters. In doing so, consider how the mass at the northwest corner might potentially be a stronger anchor via some play in the parapet height, for instance. Number 2, The proposed ratio of brick to stucco on this building is minimal, with the predominant material appearing to be stucco. Expand the use of higher quality materials on the building. Number 3, the architectural language based on the assembly of a base, exposed structural framework at the center, and top cornice could be enhanced. While the style is proposed, seems much like other contemporary projects in the vicinity, accentuating this vertically prominent language might help the project to differentiate from those around it. 4, while the base along Meeting Street has been made more substantial, it may need additional consideration. The stone base at the grade level columns might be extended to wrap continuously along the recessed storefronts. Also, there is no base of stone, brick, or stucco depicted at the stucco hyphens. This should be added or studied. Number 5, while the brick pilasters align with the brick columns beneath them, the windows seem to be floating in plane between the brick pilasters. There is an overall structural skeleton found in the red brick, but the fenestration seems to be unrelated. These should more closely relate. Number 6, regarding fenestration, most windows are placed within the stucco portions. I'm sorry, hold on. I'm sorry.
We got you back. We only lost you for a split second.
I just had to bang on the wall and say they were too loud. There's an overall structural, okay, sorry. Number 6, regarding fenestration, most windows are placed within the stucco portions and no seal or header is proposed. Depending on the direction of the architecture, the addition of these items would give relief, texture, and visual interest to the facade, as well as the opportunity to further impede water intrusion. Number 7, regarding the 9/9 light grid at the windows in the 4-story portions, due to different window widths, the lights in this grid pattern can become too horizontal, working against the BAR's preferred vertical proportions. Number 8, the new building's engagement with the historic structure has improved in that the roof of the historic structure is being activated. However, there is concern about the usefulness of the covered structure as an open-air plaza. The saved historic structure should be incorporated into the grade level live-work units. Number 9, confirm and explain the method for removing paint from the historic structure. Number 10, the project does not make a friendly gesture to the 1- and 2-story housing 1 block south or to the church at the southeast corner of the block. While there is much variety of use and building size in the larger surrounding areas, the relationships with these properties should be more fully examined. Additionally, the placement of the Sky Lounge at the top of the south facade may be insensitive to the neighboring residential. Number 11, continue to work on the parking garage facades to make this appear less like a parking garage and to de-emphasize the horizontal proportions. Number 12, the width of the spans between the brick pilasters varies around the building. While there is no desire to make the project rigid or boring, study how these spans can achieve more consistency with other spans on the same portion of the massing. Number 13, the storefront grid at the north side of the northwest corner and at the west side of the northwest corner should match. These should be symmetrical over the building quarter. Additionally, consider how this element might be extended or enhanced with I knew I'd say this wrong when I typed it, a pertinence for interest. Number 14, per section 54-306.x, the height of the non-residential grade level floor shall be between 16 feet and 20 feet. The proposal currently shows 10'9". Confirm a height variance is requested for the first floor. Number 15, regarding a finding of architectural merit and context, the public outdoor spaces proposed on this project can be successfully activated. Continue to clarify the design of the public spaces with hardscaping and landscaping, refine the architectural and urban design based on the board and staff comments, and enhance the material palette for a finding of architectural merit and context. And the staff recommendation is deferral for continued refinements based on staff and board comments.
Thank you, Ms. Parrish. The applicant now has a 5-minute period for clarification or response to the public comment and city staff comments and recommendations if the applicant chooses to exercise.
Yes, I do, and I'll keep it brief. I want to say that I appreciate the honest feedback that you got from the Preservation Society and the Historic Charleston Foundation, as well as the 2 neighbors who took the time to provide their input on the project. And similarly, having worked with the staff on a couple of preliminary reviews for the project, we've worked through a number of iterations on the design and incorporation of various elements. And I appreciate everything they've done to help us get to this point, and I look forward to working with them to resolve some of the things they brought up. I do want to say that yes, for the height variance request for the first floor, we do have 10'8" floor at the commercial portion of the live work units. And so we would request a variance for that. And that is so that the second floor there lines up with the second floor for the residential units that are around the other portions of the project.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Mr. Kirk. We'll now move to board discussion and a potential vote on this agenda item. What do my fellow board members have to say about this agenda item?
I might start, as is kind of my habit. Sorry about that. But not terribly sorry about that, but it is the habit. This project deserves a flat denial. And it's based on three basic concepts. The first being the old Regis facade. There was a reason that we preserved that facade, that we encouraged the applicants, the property owners, to preserve that facade. And it wasn't so that it might be swallowed up by this building as if this building's a white blood cell and little Regis facade is a virus. We were trying to conserve a significant contributor to the history and context of this section of Meeting Street. This proposal obliterates that. And comments that came from the public about this proposal's insensitivity towards that facade are spot on. It's really unfortunate to see this little facade be swallowed up in such a manner. The second is that this is probably the most holistic misappropriation of the BAR principles that I've ever seen at the board. I read in detail the letter that was provided as substantiation for the additional height, and almost point by point, the applicant is completely misunderstanding and misapplying the principles that we've set in our ordinance. And everything concerning height, everything concerning proportion, everything concerning material, everything concerning the relationship to the street, to the public realm, it's all completely missed. It's just wrong. The fact that the building consumes almost its entire lot does not make it an urban project. This building doesn't even properly align to Meeting Street. It's a completely rectilinear building situated on a lot with two streets that don't intersect perpendicularly. And that's the only reason that you have a widening setback on Meeting. It's that the building is forced to be rectilinear, even though the urban grid is not. That's completely wrong. And the other thing is that there's been no basis provided for the architectural merit for the additional height. Just simply attempting to meet the principles that are stated in the ordinance is not basis for additional height. It's exemplary architecture, the best materials. That's nearly verbatim from the ordinance. I don't know how that could be missed, but it has been thoroughly and completely. This project needs to be denied.
I will jump in at this point while other board members formulate their time. I first want to say that I'm sympathetic to the developer and architect in the sense that this area is a former industrial site and it's choppy and it's kind of between neighborhoods. At the same time, I would note that the public housing across the street is now on the verge of getting some historical protection, or at least its neighbors farther downtown are that are of a similar style that do give a nod to Charleston architecture. And also note, I don't think it's the Instant homes, but it's the Presbyterian homes that are across the street, kind of swallowed up by this scale, as well as the church that's immediately to the rear. And I appreciate the architect indicating that he was trying to give some deference to the church, but I think that more is in order here, because as literally one of the slides in the slide deck showed, it's the church is now to some extent in the shadow of this building, whereas that has previously not been the case in this particular lot. So to borrow from the staff's comments, as well as what Mr. White was indicating, there's no homage or nod to any of the themes that are coherent in the neighborhood, which is public housing on one side, the church in the rear, and the Presbyterian home across the street. And I think that in conjunction with the statements from HCF Preservation Society bear consideration. And so I'm not going to presage what I would do on this, but I share many of Mr. White's concerns that are in the specific factual vein that I just laid out. Other board members.
This is Leon Scott. I am also in agreement with the previous comments, including the two board members that spoke. But I think I was actually okay with the height again, had it been given some, had this given some historical significance for the height, but it doesn't. And I heard the comment, this could be anywhere architecture, and I'm strongly in agreement with that. I mean, you could take this building and put it anywhere, but it certainly is in the wrong place here. And lastly, and it's been mentioned, just the material, the sort of inferior product of the materials is, I think, has to be really revisited on this. But I'm in agreement with all the previous comments.
And I'm just going back to check my notes on this project. Ms. Sobchuk, if you have anything to add, I'd be glad to hear it now.
Mr. Chairman, I have nothing to add.
Mr. Matters, you don't have any commentary to add?
I do not.
Okay. All right. Luda,
Oh, no.
anything from you?
I'm recused from this one.
Ah, yes, you are. Thank you. I knew it was either you or James, and maybe that was the reticence to speak, but thank you. Okay, so our board members who are able to vote on this item have all spoken or have demurred. Is there a motion from a board member?
I'll introduce
White,
a
I
motion.
think you were there.
Yeah, I'll introduce a motion, and I want to make sure, since I'm not sure that this applicant has ever appeared before this board, the force of public commentary and board commentary is not personal in nature. The tradition of this board is radical candor, because we want to make sure that you as an applicant understand what the city is asking for through us as appointed public officials. So, I know sometimes I get off a little bit stern, but it's not at all a personal attack. Y'all all went through architecture school. I think you're all well versed with that, even though it may be far in the rearview mirror. I'm going to introduce a motion for denial of this proposal, based off of board and staff comments, which I think were very consistent and clear. But I'm going to articulate it in the motion. So, Mr. Chairman, I might speak slowly so you can write this out. All right. So I'm going to introduce a motion for denial based upon an inappropriate incorporation of the existing historic structure, a misappropriation of board principles, and a lack of architectural merit for the additional height. Now that I've said that, Mr. Chairman, do you think that that's clear enough that we're not only denying the project overall, but also denying the request for additional height? Do I need to clarify that?
I believe that is clear, and if asked, okay, we'll state that, and that the minutes reflect that. I would just suggest a friendly amendment. I think you meant this, Mr. White, but you got into your 3 points, which I clearly understand. Mm-hmm. Also incorporating board and staff comments, correct?
That is correct.
Give me 1 second, and I'm going to read that back. Mr. White, your motion, if I have making notes on it correctly, is a motion to deny conceptual approval of this presentation of this application based on inappropriate incorporation of an existing structure. That's the first prong. The second prong being the misappropriation of board principles. And the third, and this going specifically to request for additional height, is a lack of architectural merit, exceptional architectural merit, warranting additional height. And additionally, in this denial, incorporating board and staff comments.
That's correct.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
This is Leon Scott. I'll second.
Mr. Scott has seconded. I'll proceed to call the roll. Mr. Metters, how do you vote on this?
Yay in favor.
Mr. White,
Yay in favor.
Mr. Scott,
Yay in favor.
and myself, yay in favor. Ms. Sobchak recusing. It's unanimous. This agenda item is denied for conceptual approval. Ms. Parrish, we've been going at it pretty good, but we have agenda item number 4 for this evening.
We have agenda item number 4, and it is 411 Meeting Street. The request is for preliminary approval for the new construction of a mixed-use development. The project is not rated. It's in the Cannon Elliott Borough neighborhood, Heights District 5 and 8, and this is in the Old and Historic District. We're going to go over the previous staff comments, which came from the April 14th, 2021 meeting. Those are number 1. In general, the project has changed little from when last seen, and staff continues to appreciate the below-grade parking, attention to addressing the low line, the breaking up of the massing into multiple expressions, and the amount of open space dedicated to the public. Number 2, while materials are well noted and color palettes displayed, applicants should specifically identify any perceived long lead time items for which they may be requesting approvals at final submittal. And number 3, the roofing material at the boutique hotel is not noted. This should be a hand crimped standing seam roof. And the April 14th staff recommendation was preliminary approval with board and staff comments. The April 14th motion, actually board comments. Due to size, scale, and location of project, it needs richer detailing. Stucco frame on such large buildings does not work well. Agree with stucco comments. Buildings seem more like something you might see in Florida, but seem to work. Okay overall. Agree with comments about stucco. Need more richness and depth in the facades. And the board motion was deferral with board and staff comments with particular emphasis on richer detailing, greater depth of the facades, and elimination of stucco on frame. And we'll have the applicant join us to speak. Give me a moment.
And there was some confusion as to whether Mr. Miller was appearing as an applicant or commenter this evening, but I have down Mr. Miller, Mr. and Mrs. French, and Mr. Ellison on this item.
Okay, Mr. French just was promoted to panelist. And then looking for Mr. Ellison.
Yep.
Okay. There we go.
And Troy Miller. Okay, I just found Troy.
Looks like we might have everyone. Who would like to open for the applicant first this evening?
All right. Can you guys hear us?
We can now.
Okay. I believe Troy said he was going to speak first.
You got mute. And can they hear us?
Yeah, and now I'm going to start video. Give me 1 second, Tori. All right, there you go. You got Mike Bennett.
Very good.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank y'all for being here tonight. And I'm just going to speak for 1 or 2 minutes and then turn it over to the architects. I bought this property in 1999 with the plan of ultimately tearing down these garden-style suburban apartments that were built in the 80s in Charleston. Been working with the city for a decade or more on this project, and got the entitlement to build the hotel and the residential in 2016 and 17. We then did the demolition on those apartments, and we received our conceptual approval in December of 19. During 2020, everything was paused because of COVID. We came back in April of 2021 to seek preliminary, and were deferred. And what I heard in that meeting, very loud and clear, was that y'all were very concerned about the stucco over the frame. And I'm really, I believe these buildings like this, these grand buildings, I personally prefer them to be stucco, but I heard you loud and clear, particularly James and Jay. And so at a significant increase in the cost of the project, I think over $5 million, rather than doing stucco over frame, we are now going to do precast stucco, which I believe will alleviate the maintenance and the cracking issues that I believe y'all had. So that is kind of the major investment from y'all's comments from the April meeting that I made. The project is unique in that we are putting all the parking underneath. Again, that is a big cost. We think it's worthy on a project like this, so that there's no parking garage in the center of the project. It's a big plaza area. We've also worked with the city for several years, and we have been willing to set back. It's all private property that I own. We've set back 15 feet by the entire, about 350 feet, the entire block for the low line, so that the low line can continue to go south toward ultimately Marion Square. I believe this building has a very proper and classic architecture and would be very appropriate in our city. And I think our design team has produced a design that's worthy of this site. The architects are Richard Ellison and Taylor French from Raven Architects, and they will take you through the changes that have been made in reaction to y'all's comments in April. And if there's any architectural questions, you should ask them. But if there's any other types of questions, you're welcome to ask me. Thank you, and I'm going to turn it over to Richard and Taylor.
All right, thank you, Mike. Hey guys, my name is Taylor French with Raven Architects, and I'm joined with Richard Ellison from our office as well. And first, I just wanted to say how much we appreciate the board and staff comments from the previous submission, and we've really taken those to heart, and as Mike mentioned, increased the materiality to architectural precast in lieu of stucco, and added a much richer and greater amount of detailing, which Richard is now going to speak to.
Yeah, if we could just go forward one slide from where we are on the screen. Thanks. Yeah, I put a couple slides in here just to quickly revisit the advancement of the project through the conceptual approval process. You can zoom out to fit. On the left, our original design that had the apartment building along the low line. It has evolved on the right to what you see approved currently, where we brought the apartments onto Reed with a step back on Reed, and the condos likewise have a step back along Mary, and the low-rise portion of our project is back along the low line. Big moves that have been incorporated. And then if you don't mind just going one more slide forward from here. And these, I think, show exactly what Mike was saying very well. On the left two images you see on that column are the condo and apartments as they were originally presented. And then after height and mass approval, the proposed condominium on the right, upper right, and the proposed apartment on the lower right. You can see the step backs that were imposed on Mary and on the low line. A lot of progress from previous to new, and a lot of responsiveness in the design to that. So if you wouldn't mind just going one more slide forward from here. That's just revisiting where we've been. Now today we're responding to comments of course at the preliminary level. So now we're talking about detailing, ornamentation, and it's the fine scale details of the project. And as we've already stated, 3 of the comments were related to stucco. And as Mike just said to you, that's a big move today, is to represent this project to you in a different material. Now, precast, architectural precast concrete is like stucco. It is an integrally colored permanent material that has a relatively smooth appearance. So at all of the ways that we were able to render these buildings before as a stucco building, we'll be able to do that as out of architectural precast. All the flat areas would then go from stucco to precast. And some of the low relief ornamentation that we were doing before that would have had to have been done out of stucco can now be integrated into the precast forms. And the high relief detail that was going to be applied anyway in a stucco building will be applied likewise to a precast building. So we think going from stucco to precast is actually a fairly natural transition as far as the architectural detailing goes. What you see here in this slide on the left, both those images in the left column are what we presented in April, the previous design. And on the right, you'll see the current proposed design for the hotel. And the other comment we had besides stucco was to focus on a richer detailing of the hotel tower, specifically above the 3rd floor. I think there were a lot of positive responses, general approval actually from the board about the detailing of the building up to the 3rd floor. And the request was that we apply that same concern to the detailing above the 3rd floor. And what you'll see on the right, in the upper right, the big change in the hotel from previous to now, and I've listed them on the bottom, besides the architectural precast exterior, is to break up the roof line of the hotel. We're doing that by popping up the middle 4 hotel room bays in the center of the facade have been elevated very slightly. And so that breaks the roof line as you go across and emphasizes the center of the tower. It's tall enough to actually introduce an arched window up there that caps out that vertical column of balconies. And then third, we have increased the depth of the cornice that occurs at level 8. You'll see that on the left, that is a smooth cornice, probably about 18 or so inches deep. On the right, we've increased the depth of that, and that's reflected in the technical details that were provided to you, and added a corbelling to that cornice. So it went from a smooth, say about an 18-inch cornice to a deeper cornice with corbelling, and that adds additional detail and richness of detailing at the 8th level. Likewise, we've introduced that very same cornice to the 2 3-story elements that flank the tower to help those match the hotel tower, and you'll see that above and below. Another thing we've done to the hotel detailing is added expressed gutters, collector heads, and downspouts. We have one of the major moves we've done on this hotel is put a pitched roof on it. So this is something that is a natural and required part of having a pitched roof, is how do we handle stormwater? We think that by addressing that architecturally and doing a good job of it, that actually adds, again, a richer level of detailing to the hotel that is both functional and aesthetic. So if you wouldn't mind zooming out just a little bit so I can refer to the list of moves that's down at the bottom of that slide. Yeah, so the third thing another item we've done is to add rustication. This is something that in stucco, hard to do, but in precast, very easy to do, to give some additional richness of detailing and depth of facade, is to add rustication to the actually three vertical columns of rooms that project from the hotel tower. And we're going to see more of that in the next slide where we zoom in. And then the last thing we did was to change the shape of, it's a small thing, but we changed the shape of the pediments that occur over the windows on the 3-story portions of the hotel. If you wouldn't mind just advancing one more slide, I think some of these details really are better presented on this slide. So revisiting those, there's the breaking up of the roof line on the hotel. You'll see that in the upper right, the center portion that gets popped out. Yeah, the center portion. And then on the lower right, it really is shown there where we're lifting up that roof, a few feet to break up the roof line. The arched window, which I think you noticed before, is shown very clearly here in the lower right image. The deeper cornices, I think, are shown very well in this slide. If you look in the lower right, you'll see the deeper corbelled cornice versus what we had presented before on the lower left. The gutters, collector heads and downspouts, the stormwater collection system. The rustication, I think you can see in the lower right. If you look at the guest rooms which flank the balconies, you'll see the rustication, the horizontal rustication there. That occurs in all of the guest rooms that pop out. And then also, because we're going to precast, I should add that precast panels have panel joints that occur at a regular pattern. This is just an inevitable part of a panelized precast system, and we're expressing those on the elevation, which breaks up what otherwise might have been a smooth precast, long stretches of uninterrupted stucco are now broken up by this regular pattern of panel joints, which is an additional level of detail and pattern to our elevation that has to do with the construction. It's a natural part of that construction system. And then finally, I think in the upper right versus the upper left, you'll see how we took the pediments that were the triangular pediments. Yes, those went from being simple triangular pediments to a slightly broken pediment that is that I think gives a little more character and I think matches the style of the building a little bit better. So that was just one more detail we thought was appropriate. But we think that by doing that list, we brought the level of detailing of the hotel right to where it needed to be. That I think matches better the energy and the attention that we were giving to the first three levels. And if you wouldn't mind going one more slide that just zooms in even farther, talking about the depth of the facade and the richness of the facade, you can see just those enhancements from before and after, going from stucco over to precast concrete. And we've added the rustication, we've added vertical framing elements to the grouping of windows on the popped out rooms, and we've added a quasi keystone above each guest room window. That's just cast right into the precast. It's not a problem to do, but it again is like the corbels on the cornice. It's an additional level of richness and detailing that I think you were looking for. That's the summary of what we've done to the hotel. Really that summarizes our presentation. The rest of the submittal material is just a technical detailing of how all that was achieved.
Thank you, all three of you, for that thorough presentation. Ms. Parrish, do we have any public comment on this agenda item?
Yes, we do. We have Ms. Minnigan and Mr. Schwebler, and they're both promoted to panelists.
Okay. I guess we can start with Ms. Minnigan, go in alphabetical order. She's available.
I am. Thank you. Erin Minnigan with Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society would like to thank the applicant for reaching out and working with us throughout the design review process. We are generally comfortable with how the proposal has progressed and find many of the adjustments made from the previous version very positive, including the increased depth of the roof form and cornice on the hotel, the incorporation of the arched window on the 8th floor, and the change from stucco to precast panel. We previously made a comment in line with staff, encouraging setting the windows deeper into the wall, and we're concerned to see the windows were still set rather shallow. However, in speaking with the applicant, we understand it will be possible to recess the windows a few more inches in the next round of drawings, and we would recommend the board incorporate that condition in their approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Minnigan. Mr. Schwebler.
Yes, this is Justin Schwebler with Historic Charleston Foundation. We'd first like to thank the applicants for their dedication to incorporating the low line into their master plan and sacrificing the square footage along that property boundary to make a unique place for the public to enjoy. We find that this portion of the development is the most pleasing architecturally and will be one of the leading features of the low-lying path through the city. We're pleased to see the improvements to the central tower of the main hotel building. The cast stone cladding and rustication have helped to give more character to the main feature of the primary elevation, and the raised roof line at this tower is also an improvement. Our primary areas of concern are once again with the window depths on the main hotel building. Even with the cast stone application, they still seem very flat. We would prefer to see the windows recessed or an applied cast stone trim applied between the lintel and sill to help add visual depth. We're also concerned with the use of gutters, collection heads, and downspouts. They're not commonly used on buildings of this scale, and the use of contrasting color brings too much attention to them. They should not be highlighted as an architectural feature. If these changes are incorporated into the design, we would happily recommend preliminary approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schwebler. I'm not seeing any on my list from Lawrence, but was there any additional public comment? And Tori saying no.
There's no more.
Thank you. That means we'll move to city staff comments and recommendations if Ms. Parrish is ready after this marathon afternoon.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
These meetings used to go to 11 p.m. So
our experiences are relative, Mr. White.
Everyone's is to everyone else's. I understand.
It's a large packet of drawings to scroll through. Okay, we have arrived. Okay, we'll start with some staff observations. Number one, although largely maintaining and in some ways improving its elegant form, the cladding of the hotel portion of this project has been significantly altered from what was specifically requested, brick, to a prefabricated precast multi-part system shown as gate light on 3 of the 4 primary buildings. This product is proposed for the hotel, condo building, and boutique hotel building. The apartment building appears to use a more conventional brick rain screen cavity wall system. Any board motion will need to specifically address the use of this precast material, concrete roof tiles at the hotel, and the use of any gas lanterns. And number 2, while unfamiliar to staff and apparently fairly new to the marketplace, a quick web search indicates that this precast system is a lightweight, resilient facade system that's disrupting the industry. The featured project in this presentation is, interestingly, a 14-story hotel on which Gate collaborated to match surrounding historic masonry warehouse-style architecture in New Orleans. This particular system appears to incorporate thin brick on a 2-inch precast concrete layer, outboard of many components, including a plane of unbroken rigid insulation, a typical storefront window system, fire stopping on a structural steel framework. Number 3, details in this presentation package show the system being used with only a smooth precast skin in conjunction with precast concrete and GFRC forms for more articulated detailing, although a conversation with the applicant indicated that these exteriors could be manipulated by varying panel sizes and shapes as well as color and texture. Number 4, these details are at present somewhat vague, with many of the elements which might cause them to be successful missing or not noted. Staff and the board are called upon to fill in too many gaps, having to make assumptions at how the system is structurally supported, how water is drained off of horizontal surfaces, and to what degree the windows are set into the walls. Window recesses appear to be only 2 inches, with the material at heads and sills unidentified. Windows simply need to be set more deeply into the wall. Number 5, sheet metal flashing is shown in cases that seals and precast horizontal surfaces is excessive and should be minimized, set in mastic and held tight to the horizontal surface with a hemmed edge. Number 6, through-wall flashing is noted at some window heads while not noted on others. How this flashing is handled is a critical detail and will need to have a minimized profile held tight atop the wall to be visually conspicuous. Number 7, the project's height, scale, and mass are essentially the same as previously shown, with underground parking continuing to be a big positive, as are the large plaza area and the project's addressing of the low line. However, the general architectural direction is contrary to what was requested by board and staff. Ideally, the architectural expression of the 4 visually separate structures should be distinctive, further serving to help break up this large project into smaller pieces. 8, the roofing material at the boutique hotel was noted to be a hand-crimped standing seam roof. 9, a board comment was to increase the depth and richness in the facades. While this has been done in some cases, in others it is still lacking. And then our staff comments. Number 1, the use of this system is a departure from more traditional building methods, or even the 8-inch thin brick clad precast concrete panel systems used on the Jasper, and is being used on the large 40 Line Street project. While this proposed system may hold some promise, there is not enough information on the details to explain how the system components may or may not work together to complete an assembly, giving the desired results. Provide further clarification. Number 2, although the essence of what is shown on detail 1 AR 57 may be parsed out, the detail lacks enough information and graphics in terms of varying line weights to make staff unsure of its success as depicted. Provide further clarification. Number 3, although the detailing and materials on the brick veneer apartment building are more familiar, the avoidance of a lipped brick and the shallowness of how the windows are set into the walls are cause for concern even here. Number 4, the language of the 2-story portion of the hotel at the corner of Reed Street and Meeting Street, as shown on detail 1 AR 61, with a brick cladding, is different from the hotel and more like the apartments. Elevations on AR 25 and AR 46 show limestone cladding. Please clarify. Number 5, a color on AR 28 shows a black color noted as condo roof, while the condo roof noted on AR 30, as well as elevations and rendering, shows green. Please clarify. Number 6, it is assumed that the low towers referred to on, low towers, I knew I'd do that too, referred to on AR 62 are the 3-story wings at Meeting Street as noted on AR 63. Please confirm. Number 7, exterior materials will need to wrap into the entry-exit areas of the underground parking, with specialty paving and a ceiling to a distance of 25 to 30 feet, or to a clear delineation point determined by interior elements. 8, materials and color palettes. While showing the precast panel material as a pale green on our displays, do a good job of conveying this information. The terracotta look tile roofing is concrete, for which, if approved by the board, staff will need product literature for review. The brick for the apartment building appears to look a little too much like wire cut, but samples may prove otherwise. It is noted that gas lanterns are typically not allowed on new construction and would need to be specifically addressed by the board. 9, while materials are well noted and color palettes displayed, applicant should specifically identify any perceived long lead time items for which they may be requesting approvals at final submittal. And the staff recommendation is deferral for the introduction of a primary material different from that requested in the previous board motion. And if board agrees to its use, for the exploration of various finishing techniques to differentiate the buildings, as well as to explore ways to increase facade depth and richness. The board should additionally deliberate on the acceptance of the terracotta look concrete roof tiles and the proposed gas lanterns.
Thank you, Ms. Parrish. We now have an opportunity for up to 5 minutes of response or clarification from any of the applicants this evening. You can take advantage of it if you would like, but you're not bound to.
Yeah, well, we certainly want to at least address the issue of recessing windows into the facade. That seems to be a recurring element. It's something that we're going to be able to achieve. The exact location of the window within an exterior assembly has to do with the window system we choose, what accessories we choose, and exactly what the dimensions of that system are. You know, it's the sort of thing that will become very easily observed and judged in a mock-up panel, but harder to do at this stage other than just to carry it forward as a comment. But I do know that window systems do usually the kinds of window systems we're talking about using. They do have panning and trim accessories that are available that allow you to engage the to engage the waterproof portion of the skin and set the window further back in the elevation, depending on how far back we want to set it. We are going from what is nominally a 1-inch stucco system to at least a 2 1/4 inch layer of precast, which automatically allows us to set the windows back at least an inch further than we would have with stucco. So that's a positive. And I guess, so just to assure the board that this is not a comment that is lost on us, and one that we want to be evaluated at the mock-up panel level. Should we go back and look at some of the other comments, if we could there may be some that we can very easily address.
Sure. I mean, it sounds like a lot of the drawing issues are just a mismatch of various colors, schemes. You can feel, if you want to devote time to that, that's fine. You might also speak specifically to the relatively minor issue of gas lanterns and or exposed drainage systems.
Yeah, the drainage system. So that's, that if that may be a matter of board discussion and opinion. It is certainly something we can do and do well and articulate and contrast as we have shown. Very frequently, those are painted out to match the facade, just to try to make them go away. They're generally there, but painted out. And what we're proposing today as a color scheme is contrast. That was our choice and our opinion, but we'll certainly listen to board opinions on that. As well as the possibility of going with an internal guttering system, just eliminating that altogether. It's a little more complex, involves internal plumbing, but it's not. It was a response to the request for a richer level of detailing. It's not something that we're pushing heavily.
Okay. I understand. And I'm sorry, did applicant want to address anything further? Give you another minute or so.
I just wanted to say that if the board has any specific questions on materiality, we're here to address those. Got it.
And I think we're going to certainly have that discussion with my architect members of the board here in a moment. And I think mostly in a positive way, but there's some questions raised. I know there are going to be some questions raised. That being said, we'll now move to board discussion and a potential vote on agenda item number 4. What do my fellow board members have to say about this proposal?
Well, everybody else is still muted, so I'll jump in yet again. I'm familiar with Gate as a manufacturer of precast concrete, and generally familiar with the Gate Light product line or project approach, I should say. More detail does need to be provided, although my professional understanding of the product is that it's a well-manufactured and well-detailed system, but that needs to be demonstrated to the board, because we only act on what we see and not on what we know from outside experiences, whatever they may be. So there is a certain level of detail, actually a significant level of detail, that's missing from this application. But I think that the thrust of this application is an improvement on its predecessor, and I'll leave it up to the rest of the board to see if this application really needs muster for preliminary approval. Although I do appreciate the design. And then to be very specific, I don't mind the exposed gutters and downspouts. I have a lot of concerns on concealed gutters, having been bitten by them before. And I really think that we need to be consistent about the gas lantern question. That comes up a lot, and we really try to prohibit an anachronistic application of gas lanterns. But other than that, I agree with staff comments.
I'll jump in now. I want to speak purely to the improvements in the aesthetic appearance, the rustication, the breaking up of the roof line, the broken pediments, the commitment to add depth to the windows. I think that despite there being a significant change in materials, the direction is great, and the appearance is much higher quality. You can really see that. I don't have any heartburn about the exterior gutter and downspout system. It may be a little unusual for a builder on the scale, but it doesn't really bother me. But in general, you have creatively addressed exactly what we asked, which was to give some meaningful detail and depth to this facade. I think seeing the windows set deeper will do that as well. I was going to speak to the more procedural point, or our role as stewards in communities, which is what Mr. White raised, which is that I don't think we can approve this tonight just because we need a lot more technical information on the material, which I'm willing to hear more from the board about. But I want you to understand that, at least from my perspective, any deferral is not that I would propose or that others might propose, at least in my mind, is not based on the detail. I think you've done an excellent job on that. I think my personal hang up is on the novelty of the application of this material on this specific project. And if the applicant wants to further address that, we can, but I think that may just be a matter of obtaining information from the manufacturer supply. Other board comments?
This is Luda Sobchuk. I'm in agreement with staff comments and board members. We do need a more understanding of the detailing of these materials. Even so, on overall, the project as a forms of some elements on the buildings progressing in right direction. So that's a very positive. So in order to support that positivity, we really need more details.
I had a quick question for the applicant, if I could interject real quick. So the application in the 1.5-inch details that are provided, it references GFRC, but that is the gate light product, is it not?
So if it, to the extent we can integrate the relief, the ornament, the relief ornament with the precast, that's a natural fit, and we would do that. There comes a point at which working with gate, they may prefer it to be added on as a separate element, that it's more hollow and framed out, as opposed to something that's solid. And so I think the intent is really that the deeper element would be added and the shallower element is integrated.
Okay, because I think the reason that we're having this conversation about what gate light is and where it goes is that it's not specifically referenced, as far as I could tell, in your large scale section details. And I was interpreting that it was being referenced in your leader notes to GFRC. So if that's the case, then I think we can probably wrap our heads around this. But it is a matter of being very specific about the materials that are used, because you reference either natural limestone or GFRC, and I was interpreting that if the leader note says natural limestone, it is in fact that material, and if it's GFRC, it's the gate light you were talking about. Is that correct?
No, if it's GFRC, we are proposing GFRC, and it's because it is applied ornament. So the gate light is really, it's the plane. The gate light is the base surface of the building, in much the same way that the flat stucco would be the base skin of the building. Okay. That is what we're proposing to be the gate light system, which is a 2 1/4 inches. Instead of 1 inch of stucco, it's 2 1/4 inches of concrete that's reinforced on a tubular steel backup with 2 inches of insulation. I think the sections show all three of those components. What gets mounted outboard in terms of hollow ornamentation, that's what we're proposing would be the glass fiber reinforced products that are applied to that. Now, whether that ornamentation is panelized, installed at the factory by gate and delivered, or whether it's put up after the fact, I think that's more of an execution or something that has to be worked through with gate and with a contractor on board. Okay. But the materials that we call out are correct.
Okay. I think because of the novelty of the system, it this is one of those circumstances where it's difficult to fully comprehend what's going on because we can't look at a physical sample before us. And unfortunately, it's going to be a couple more weeks before we can do that. All right. Well, I'll shut up. Let other people talk. Sorry.
Mr. Matters.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate the gutter and downspouts, recognizing how the water is going to be taken to the ground from the roof. I appreciate the listening and modifications to the plans that have been made. I am driven right now to make sure that I'm listening also to Tori and looking at the documentation she's put forth, which seems to me is simple, maybe not simple, is organization and detailing of the plans, and to the extent specifications are on the plans, so that the matching sheet to sheet is there for clarity. And that is why I would support a deferral for this application today. But if that organization and detailing is clarified, I would support the approval of preliminary approval at the next meeting or your next time you applicate.
Yeah, I think there seems to be some consensus on this board that we did take a little bit of a difference in architectural direction, but it's very pleasing with where we are. We literally need some technical details filled in and reconciled, both about the material and about these plans. And provided we have that, I feel very good about this project.
I agree with the way you said that, Mr. Chairman.
Any other board members on this project? Hearing none, how about a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion for deferral of this project, specifically requesting, and I might ask for your help with this language, which would be very similar to the comments you just made.
A deferral specific to the issues of construction materials and inconsistencies in the plans as presented?
Yes, and then of course the comments that are made by staff and the board.
And staff comments.
Yes.
So
Thank
your
you.
motion, if I've heard it correctly, as I made my friendly amendment, was a motion for deferral on the specific criteria of material information and inconsistencies in the plans as presented, and also incorporating board and staff comments.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I will
I
second
will
that.
second.
Okay. Well, Mr. White beat Ms. Sobchak by just a second to it, but I'll go to her for a vote. Ms. Sobchak, how do you vote on this motion?
Yay in favor?
Mr. Scott? When we lose Mr. Scott, we can proceed in his absence. Mr. White?
Yay, in favor.
Mr. Matters?
Yay, in favor.
And myself, yay, in favor. And I would hasten to add to the applicants, Mr. Bennett and his architects, that there's some sincerity about the direction of the presentation. Things are headed in the right direction. We just have to do some more due diligence related to a somewhat novel material in this application, as well as these making sure we've done our due diligence and consistency of your plans. But thank you for your thoughtful presentation this evening.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. I found Mr. Scott. I don't know if
We can.
I came back.
You want to be included. Leon, what would be your
Then
vote on Mr. Metter's motion?
Yay in favor.
Thank you. That makes it unanimous for deferral for the reasons stated in the motion. Thanks again to the applicants. Do we have anything for the good of order or for this board in particular? No? I'm seeing Tori shaking.
don't have any.
Looking for Lawrence. Nothing from Lawrence. Thank you all for your patience this evening. We moved through some very significant projects with some very thoughtful dialogue, and I didn't think it was rushed at all. I thought it was very thorough. It's always a pleasure working with you and listening to your thoughts and insights on these projects from so many different perspectives. I hope everyone has a wonderful evening, and I don't know what the forecast is for this evening, but try to stay dry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you all.
Thank you.